First at 9. This Thursday, the 1st of August 2024. With or against? Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna set to reveal its presidential candidate next week. Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena's Mahajana Eksat Peramuna pledges support for President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Progress Review. IMF staff team visits Sri Lanka to discuss the country's economic progress under the Extended Fund Facility Programme. On alert, Sri Lanka is prepared to repatriate Sri Lankan expatriate workers in Iran if the conflict escalates to violence, says Foreign Affairs Minister. Bonds in place. Former Justice Minister Dr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa places bonds for his presidential candidacy. Number of presidential candidates rises to 10.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දෙනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Sri Lanka's premier primetime English news bulletin, Derana First at 9. I'm Tharindu Mahendra, joining you with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. Now taking you to your top story this evening, amid rising tensions in Iran following the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, Foreign Minister Ali Sabri assures that the government has a plan in place to repatriate Sri Lankan expatriate workers in the region in the event the conflict escalates to violence. Meanwhile, the minister urged Sri Lankans not to seek foreign employment with visit visas, citing the recent predicament of Sri Lankans in Myanmar and Russia who failed to follow the proper channels to seek foreign employment.
ඉරානයේ මේ වෙනකොට මතුවලා තියෙන තත්ත්වයන් එක්ක ගෝලීය ගැටුම්කාරී තත්ත්වයකට ඉඟිපළ වෙමින් පවතිනවා. මේ තත්ත්වය බොහොම බරපතල තත්ත්වයකට ගියොත් අපිට මේ ශ්‍රමිකයෝ නැවත ලංකාවට ගෙන්න ගන්න සිද්ධ වෙයිද? ඒ සඳහා විදේශ කටයුතු අමාත්‍යාංශයට යම් වැඩපිළිවෙලක් තියෙනවද?
ඔව් ජනාධිපතිතුමා උපදෙස් දුන්නේ ඊයේ.
Yes, yesterday the president instructed us not to leave anything to chance and to be ready for every eventuality. That is why he appointed 2 committees to monitor this situation and to take necessary measures. One committee will oversee security related matters which include vetting tourists from that region and ensuring Sri Lanka's security. This committee comprises myself, Ministers Derana and Manusha Nayakara and Presidential Advisor Sagala Ratnayaka. Additionally, another committee has been appointed to oversee the process of repatriating Sri Lankan expatriate workers in the region back to Sri Lanka in case the conflict escalates further. We already had a plan in place for this situation in October, which we are now reviewing. In the event that the conflict escalates, we have a plan to take immediate action to safeguard the lives of Sri Lankans in the region. During a meeting earlier today, we discussed the matter at length.
So you told that there is 40,000 Sri Lankans in Romania. There were some reports that some people are tricked to go to Romania. Has the Foreign Ministry looked into this?
I think rather than the Foreign Ministry, it is the Minister of Foreign Employment and the Bureau which should look into that. One thing we continuously advise Sri Lankans is that please do not go seeking employment on visit visas. You need to get your work visas and get your contract and then go. Now, despite all these things, we have a problem in Myanmar. There were about 56 of them. Recently, we have rescued about 48. But 2 weeks ago, they have gone to Dubai, and from Dubai, 8 of them again are gone. Blaming the government and the Foreign Ministry is of no avail because you go into a place which we have no control. Therefore, again, I urge all Sri Lankans, if you want to go abroad, that's your choice, that's your right, that's your freedom, but don't knowingly get into trouble. Go through approved job agents and also register with SLBFE, go through your contract and then go.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund has held discussions on the measures essential for Sri Lanka to unlock the 4th tranche under the Extended Fund Facility Programme without disturbance with President Ranil Wickremesinghe this morning. According to State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe, discussions also focused on the progress achieved during the discussions with bilateral creditors and the bondholders on debt restructuring.
A staff team from the International Monetary Fund, headed by Senior Mission Chief for Sri Lanka Peter Brewer, arrived in the island to hold discussions with regard to the progress Sri Lanka has achieved under the Extended Fund Facility Programme, which was approved for the island nation in March last year. An IMF spokesperson stated that the recent economic developments in Sri Lanka will also be discussed during the mission's visit. Apart from the first disbursement of around $333 million, which was received with the approval of the program last year, the Sri Lankan government unlocked 2 more tranches, each amounting to around $333 million from the IMF upon the successful completion of 2 reviews under the EFF program. Against this backdrop, the visiting staff mission of the IMF called on President Ranil Wickremesinghe this morning. According to State Minister of Finance Shahan Semasinghe, discussions were held on the measures essential to unlocking the 4th tranche without disturbance. He added that a delay in obtaining the 4th tranche could have a negative impact on the Sri Lankan economy. The State Minister noted that the progress achieved during the discussions with bilateral creditors and the bondholders on debt restructuring was also discussed. Meanwhile, speaking at a media briefing this afternoon, Minister of Foreign Affairs President's Counsel Ali Sabri also highlighted the importance of obtaining the 4th tranche without delay.
පහුගිය දවසක ජනාධිපතිතුමා ප්‍රකාශයක් කළා මුදල් තියෙන්නේ දෙසැම්බර් මාසෙ වෙනකන් විතරයි කියලා. ඒ වගේම තමයි දැන් අපි දකිනවා ඊළඟ වාරිකයේ අපිට ජනවාරි වෙනකොට ලැබෙන්න තියෙනවා. මේ වෙනකොට මැතිවරණයක් ප්‍රකාශයටපත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඉරාන යුදමය තත්ත්වයක් ගැන පුරෝකථනයක් තියෙනවා. මේ සියල්ල එකට ගැට ගැහුණන් පස්සේ මේ ආර්ථිකයේ මොන වගේ තත්ත්වයකට යයි?
ආර්ථිකය තිබුණු තත්ත්වයට සාපේක්ෂව යම් ප්‍රකෘති.
The economy has achieved progress compared to where it was earlier. If someone says that we have overcome our economic difficulties and built a strong economy, it is false. Usually what happens is that the government introduces a new policy. However, when it starts to produce favorable results, the government deviates from that policy. The policies also change from government to government. That is why we collapsed. No matter who comes to power, it is important that these policies continue. We experience an annual deficit of $10 billion when repaying debt. That has to be managed. The IMF does not provide funds based on individuals. They work as per their debt sustainability analysis. The IMF does not change its stance based on individuals. If you do not unlock the next tranche, which amounts to around $400 million, what will happen to this country?
ඒකට ජනවාරි වෙනකොට ඇමරිකානු ඩොලර් බිලියන 400ක් පමණ වන ඊළඟ ට්‍රාන්ච් එක අපිට ආවේ නැත්නම් මොකද තියෙන විකල්පය?
Meanwhile, the visiting IMF staff mission held discussions with opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. Discussions were held with regard to the tranches disbursed to Sri Lanka by the IMF so far and the presidential election.
Horizon Campus 2024 Intake 2. Register now.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa stated that he informed the International Monetary Fund representatives that Sri Lanka's agreement with the global lender would be revised under a future mandate. The opposition leader made this statement during a meeting with the Executive Committee of the Government Medical Officers Association.
The newly elected Executive Committee of the Government Medical Officers Association met with opposition leader Sajith Premadasa today at the opposition leader's office.
We will make healthcare a fundamental right of the Sri Lankan people. We will draft the constitutional amendments necessary for this purpose. The current tax system is unfair, with the government imposing taxes far beyond its revenue targets. During a meeting with representatives from the International Monetary Fund yesterday, we informed them that the terms of Sri Lanka's agreement with the IMF, specifically those regarding the tax formula, would be revised based on a future mandate. Our aim is to implement a fair tax policy. That was our stance in the past and it remains unchanged today. To increase state revenue, we must identify tax evaders and wealthy individuals receiving undue tax relief, which results in significant losses for the country. Through this process, we will enhance state revenue. We will make fair and substantive changes to the tax formula. We are strongly opposed to the current government's intention of introducing an imputed rental income tax. The Mathura District Committee of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, headed by Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara, has pledged to support President Ranil Wickremesinghe and proposes the removal of Sagara Karyawasam from the post of SLPP General Secretary. Meanwhile, speaking to media, national organizer of the SLPP, Namal Rajapaksa, confirmed that his party will reveal their presidential candidate on the 7th of August.
The Mathura District Committee meeting of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was held in Palaturu today under the patronage of Minister Kanchana Wijesekara. During the meeting, the proposals of supporting President Ranil Wickremesinghe in the upcoming election and the appointment of a suitable member to the post of the General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna were approved.
Podujana Peramune අයිතිය තියෙන පාක්ෂිකයන්ට මිසක් ඉන්න නිලධාරී කීප දෙනෙක්ට නෙවෙයි. අපි අතරම යෝජනා කරනවා පොදුජන පෙරමුණේ වර්තමාන ජනාධිපතිවරයාට සහාය පළ කිරීම සඳහා එකතු වෙලා ඉන්න කණ්ඩායම හැටියට අපිව පොදු ජන පෙරමුණෙන් ඉවත් කරන්න කාටවත් පුළුවන් කමක් නැහැ. අපි තමයි මේ පක්ෂය හැදුවේ. පත්කල മന്ത്രിවරු නෙමෙයි අපි. අපි තේරීපත් වෙච්ච മന്ത്രിවරු. ඒ වගේම පක්ෂයේ සම්පූර්ණ සහයෝගය රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමා වෙත ලබා දිය යුතු කියන යෝජනාවක්. ඒ වගේම ඉදිරියේදී පක්ෂයේ ව්‍යුහාත්මක වෙනසක් සිදු කරලා විශේෂයෙන්ම පක්ෂයේ මහලේකම් දුරට ගැළපෙන පුද්ගලයෙක්. සාගර කාර්යසම් කිසිසේත්ම ගැළපෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒ වෙනුවට රමේෂ් පතිරණ වැනි മന്ത്രിවරයෙක් සහ නිලධාරී මණ්ඩලයක් පත් කරගත යුතු කියන යෝජනාවක් මාතර දිස්ත්‍රික් බල මණ්ඩලයේ හැටියට අපි අද සමත කරගත්තා.
Meanwhile, 20 out of the 21 members of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, who represent the Warakapula Pradeshiya Sabha, have pledged their support to President Ranil Wickremesinghe. This was revealed today by SLPP parliamentarian Udayakanta Gunatilaka.
මම ඇතුළු අපේ ප්‍රාදේශ සභාවේ උපසභාපතිතුමා ඇතුළු මන්ත්‍රීවරු සියල්ලක්ම වරකවල ප්‍රාදේශ සභාව හැටියට එකතු වුණේ එළඹෙන ජනාධිපතිවරණයේදී රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ මැතිතුමාට සහයෝගය ලබා දෙනවා කියන පණිවිඩය රටට ලබා දීම සඳහා.
In the meantime, a meeting with former chairman and deputy chairman of local government bodies representing Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna was held today at the party headquarters in Nilumawata in Battaramulla.
පක්ෂයක් හැටියට ගැලවිලා ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා. හැබැයි අධිස් සභාවල එහෙම ගිහිල්ලා නැහැනේ. පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේම තමයි රනිල් ජනාධිපතිතුමාට ජනාධිපතිතුමා පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ 134ක් දුන්නේ. අපි දුන්නේ නැහැ. ඒකේදී අපි මෙතන ඉන්න පැහැදිලිවම ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදු පෙරමුණත් එක්ක
නෑ ඒ බොහොම සුළු පිරිසක් සමහර ගොඩක් අය දන්නේ නැතුව මොකටද මේ යන්නේ කියලා. දැන් මේ පක්ෂේ එන්නේ පක්ෂේ තීන්දුව දැනගන්න. ඉතින් ඒ ගියා අයත් අද මෙතෙන්ට ඇවිල්ලා කිව්වා. ඉතින් අපි දන්නේ නැතුව අපිව කැඳෙව්වා. ඒ නිසා ඒගොල්ලෝ අද පණිවිඩය දැනගත්ත බොහොම උද්‍යෝගයෙන් පණිවිඩය බාරගත්ත පක්ෂයේ මේ වගේ තීන්දුවක් ගත්ත එක ගැන ඒගොල්ලෝ බොහොම සතුටින් කතා කරා. පණිවිඩය අපි අපේක්ෂකයෙක් ඉදිරිපත් කරනවා කියන එකයි.
ඉතින් පක්ෂයක් විදිහට දේශපාලන මණ්ඩලයත් පක්ෂයත් ගන්න තීන්දුවක් දැක්ක ඉන්නවා කියන පණිවිඩය තමයි අය ලබා දුන්නේ.
ඒ කියන්නේ දැන් 7 වෙනිදා ඔබතුමාලගේ අපේක්ෂක එළි දැක්වීමක් තියෙනවද?
පැහැදිලිවම තියෙනවා.
අපේක්ෂකෙක් වෙනම දානවද?
ඕ අනිවාර්යයෙන්.
ජනාධිපතිතුමාට තාම ඉඩක් තියෙනවද ඔබතුමාලගේ?
තීන්දුව කරලා ඉවරයි ඉතින් පක්ෂේ තමයි තීන්දුව කරන්න ඕන. මම නෙමෙයි පක්ෂ කිව්වොත් ආපහු වෙනස් කරන්න කියලා ඒත් කරනවා.
The Mahajana Eksat Peramuna, led by Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena, has also decided to support President Ranil Wickremesinghe at the upcoming presidential election. The Prime Minister made this announcement while addressing a media briefing in Colombo today.
මහජන එක්සත් පෙරමුණේ මධ්‍යමකාරක සභාව අද දින රැස් වී තීරණ කීපයකට එළඹියා. ජනාධිපති රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ අපි කොහොමත් සහයෝගය දක්වමින් හිටියේ. මේ ආණ්ඩුවේ අග්‍රාමාත්‍යවරයා මම අග්‍රාමාත්‍යයට රාජ්‍ය පාලනයේ වගකීමක් තියෙනවා. ඒ වගකීමට අතිරේකව අපේ පක්ෂයත් අද රැස් වෙලා අනිත් සංවිධාන වගේම මේ තීරණය ප්‍රකාශයට පත් කරනවා. පැමිණි සියලු දෙනාගේම ඒකමතික තීරණයක්.
Election deposits were placed at the Election Commission on behalf of former Justice Minister Dr. Vijay Dasa Rajapaksha, who will contest the presidential election under the National Democratic Front. Accordingly, as of now, a total of 10 presidential candidates have placed bonds for the 2024 presidential election.
Members of the National Democratic Front placed bonds at the Election Commission today on behalf of former Justice Minister Dr. Vijay Dasa Rajapaksha for his candidacy in the upcoming presidential election. In the meantime, members of the United Socialist Party placed bonds on behalf of the party's presidential candidate Siritunga Jayasuriya. Further, members of Ruhunu Janatha Peramuna placed bonds on behalf of its presidential candidate Ajantha Soisa. Meanwhile, former parliamentarian KK Piyadasa placed his deposit at the Election Commission today as an independent candidate. Accordingly, as of now, 10 candidates have placed election deposits for the upcoming presidential election. Current President Ranil Wickremesinghe, former parliamentarian Sarath Kirthiratna and former parliamentarian KK Piyadasa are contesting the presidential poll as independent candidates. Meanwhile, Oshala Herath contesting under the new independent front, ASP Liyanage contesting under the Sri Lanka Labour Party, Sajith Premadasa contesting under the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, PWSK Bandaranayaka contesting under the Jatika Sangwardhana Peramuna, Dr. Vijay Dasa Rajapaksha contesting under the National Democratic Front, Siritunga Jayasuriya contesting under the United Socialist Party, and Ajantha Soisa contesting under the Ruhunu Janatha Peramuna have placed election deposits at the Election Commission for their candidacy.
Now let's take a look at the latest developments in the political front.
The current government came into power because of the struggle. Is this government implementing the system changes that the people in the struggle wanted? If the current government continues on this so-called swinging bridge, it will likely result in increased debt.
He assumed leadership during a period of political, social and economic instability and worked towards social stability and economic progress. Therefore, we believe that at the moment he is the most suitable leader to advance the country. That is why we decided to support him.
We elected him president with 136 votes. He had a duty to consult the party's opinion and take appropriate actions. Instead, he compelled other people to nominate him, which undermines the party. This has destroyed the party.
There are only 50 days remaining until the presidential election, after which the parliament will be dissolved. A general election will be held within a maximum of 52 days. By mid-November, the election will be completed and the first steps towards the developing the country will begin. The public must start to say that this time the vote is for the NPP and for Andru Kumara Disanayaka.
If the wrong person is appointed, their previous behaviour will resurface. They may act friendly only until they gain power. If Sajid Premadasa has exhibited such behaviour, you should not vote for him. I urge you to vote for competent individuals for these positions. Sujiva Ruwan Kumara alias Lokupati, one of the primary suspects implicated in the shooting in Aturugiriya, which resulted in the deaths of Surendra Vasanta Pereira alias Club Vasanta and another victim, has been arrested in Belarus. Additionally, there have been reports that Rotuba Amila and Kanjipani Imran, two notorious underworld figures, have also been detained in Russia, which have not been substantiated as yet.
Sujiva Ruwan Kumara alias Lokupati and Amila Sebala Ratnayaka alias Rotuba Amila have been directly implicated in the murder of Surendra Vasanta Pereira alias Club Vasanta, which occurred on the 8th of July. The bullets used in the murder were marked with KPI, leading police to suspect Kanjipani Imran's involvement due to previous evidence. During the investigation, it was discovered that all three suspects had orchestrated the murder while hiding abroad. Lokupati was apprehended by Belarusian authorities after fleeing from Dubai. The Criminal Investigation Department of Sri Lanka has been officially notified and is actively working to expedite his extradition back to Sri Lanka. Lokupati has outstanding warrants against him for several high-profile court cases. Additionally, reports indicate that his brother, Sanjeeva Pushpakumara de Silva, and the wife of one of his associates named Marvin Jana have also been arrested in Belarus. Meanwhile, Kanjipani Imran and Rotuba Amila were detained by Belarusian security forces as they attempted to flee to Russia. However, Belarusian authorities have not yet confirmed this latter arrest, prompting the CID to request verification from Interpol.
Star Dishwasher Dali Tel Indul Pahasuwen Sede. Star Dishwasher Magic Tub එක.
Welcome back. State Minister of Investment Promotion Delo Mamunugama stated that with dates for the presidential election being announced, a slowdown in foreign direct investments to the country is expected in the short term. However, the minister added that the Board of Investments expects to submit approximately 300 business proposals from investors to the Cabinet of Ministers this year to obtain the business of strategic importance status, which is necessary for starting operations within the Colombo port city.
We
have signed agreements with 35 companies in 2024, bringing in a total investments of $800 million. The Kanka Santure Free Trade Zone will be the first free trade zone in Sri Lanka operated through a public-private partnership. We will initiate the project by partnering with Canadian-based entrepreneurs in the coming days. With the election approaching, we expect a decrease in new investments. Therefore, the main goal of the BOI is to start the operations of the 35 new investments along with 100 other investments that have started their constructions in the near future.
What's the progress with Sri Lanka resuming the stalled investments?
Stalled investments was stalled, as you said, during the COVID period. And then when the economic recession came up, then all the investments stalled. It is those investments that had stalled that are engaging now. they didn't want to engage with us when the dollar was 400 rupees. So I can easily tell you out of the 30 projects are projects that stalled because of the recession at that time and that have re-engaged. Economic Conversion Act පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ අනුමත වුණා.
The Economic Conversion Act was passed in Parliament. We amended it by adding a 3-month grace period for implementation. After the elections, an economic commission will be appointed instead of the BOI for investment promotions. Under the same act, the commission will have the authority to open offices in other countries under the name Invest Lanka. These officers will collaborate with investment promotion agencies to attract investments to the country. Industrial zones in the country will also be operated separately by a different board of directors under the name Zones Sri Lanka. When talking about the port city, a firm can only open its business under the status Business of Strategic Importance. Firms must first apply to become authorized persons, after which they can submit their project proposals to the Port City Commission. If the proposal complies with the Port City Commission's regulations, it will be sent to the Ministry to prepare a BSI for Cabinet approval. So far, we have submitted and received approval for over 20 BSIs from the Cabinet. There have been investments coming to the Port City. However, the delay in BSIs was due to the Central Bank of Sri Lanka not drafting the necessary banking regulations in time. Looking at the backlog from the past 3 to 4 months, we anticipate submitting around 300 BSIs to the Cabinet this year.
මේ වසරේ අපිට BSI 300ක් විතර කැබිනට් එකට අපිට දාන්න සිද්ධ වෙන තත්ත්වයක් තියෙනවා.
චයිනීස් ප්‍රොජෙක්ට් එකේ රිෆයිනරි එකේ අර වතුර එහෙම ප්‍රශ්නයක්
රිෆයිනරි එකේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ.
There is no issue with the refinery. We have not included it in the calculations as this investment alone amounts to $3 billion. We have allocated the land and sufficient water is available. All land issues have been resolved. The investors have requested additional land, but we have informed them that until they begin operations on the currently allocated land, we cannot release more land. If the operations proceed successfully, we are capable of providing an additional 100 acres of land as requested.
අපිට තව යම් අක්කර 100ක් විතර ඉල්ලනවා ඒක දීමේ හැකියාව තියෙනවා.
According to the central bank, Sri Lanka has earned around $1.5 billion from tourism in the first 6 months of this year. CBSL statistics show that this is almost double the amount earned during the corresponding period last year, during which earnings stood at $875 million. Earnings from tourism in June 2024 is estimated at $151 million in comparison to $154 million in May this year. In the meantime, foreign remittances for the first 6 months of 2024 were recorded at $3.14 billion compared to the $2.82 billion income from this sector in the same period last year. Additionally, Sri Lanka's foreign reserves have risen to $5.7 billion in June 2024 compared to $4.4 billion in 2023. The Colombo Stock Exchange closed in green today as a result of price gains in counters such as John Keel's Holdings, Sampath Bank and Haley's Fabric, with turnover crossing 756 million rupees. The benchmark all-share index settled 0.29% higher at 11,439.70 points, while the S&P Sri Lanka 20 edged up by 0.49% to close at 3,281.62 points. Trading volume on the ASPI dropped to 25 million shares from 197.6 million in the previous session. Mixed interest was observed in John Keel's Holdings, Capital Alliance and Citizens Development Business Finance, whilst retail interest was noted in Brown's Investments, Dialogue Ashiata and LOLC Finance. The capital goods sector was the top contributor to the market turnover. Foreign investors closed as net buyers, purchasing shares worth 70.7 million rupees, while domestic investors were net sellers, offloading shares worth 708.2 million rupees. Now let's take a look at the rupee exchange rate for the day. And with that, here's a look at corporate news in brief. The Securities Exchange Commission announced that Sri Lanka's Employees Provident Fund has been repaid 231 million rupees, which it was estimated to have lost by purchasing shares of Lavs Gas plc in 2011. The SEC had filed legal action against WKH Vegapitiya, UK Tilak N. De Silva and TI Hulangamua for the EPF's purchase of 33 million shares of Lavs Gas plc on the 10th of October 2022. The Commission further noted that the trio had already paid 6.6 million rupees to the compensation fund of the SEC, in addition to the 231 million rupees paid to the EPF as agreed at court on the 19th of July this year. Meanwhile, the Board of Directors of John Keells Holdings plc has resolved to recommend the issuance of 150,263,595 new ordinary shares on a 1-for-10 basis at a price of 160 rupees per share, potentially raising 24,042,175,200 rupees. The proceeds from the rights issuance are earmarked for the funding requirements of Waterfront Properties Private Limited, a subsidiary of JKH, to develop the City of Dreams Sri Lanka Integrated Resort Project. In conjunction with the rights issue, the Board of Directors has also proposed a subdivision of shares in which each existing ordinary share will be subdivided into 10 new shares, increasing the total number of shares to 16,528,995,520. The Chief Executive Officer of Dilma Ceylon Tea Company plc, Dilshansi Fernando, says that the company remains optimistic about the future prospects for the business, focusing on the potential for tea amongst consumers as a means of overcoming political, trade and other challenges. In its annual report, the company's CEO highlighted that the company is committed to further enhancing its operational efficiency, cost management and risk mitigation to improve profitability and resilience. And that's all the news we have for you today. Thank you for joining us and have a good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit adaderana.lk.